You're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. So this evening we're here to look back on Galway's victory over Kilkenny in round two. A great turnaround for the Galway senior hurlers after their opening round defeat to Tipperary in the league in Pearse Stadium in the first round, but they've turned things around and got the first win. And I'm joined by Nickey, Brennan and Fergal Lynch to look back on the game. Fergal, just coming to you first, like it's a big result for Galway considering what happened in the first round.
Yeah, a huge result, really, and to be honest, a little bit unexpected. I didn't think that big performance was in Galway, especially going to Nolan Park. And considering how Kilkenny performed against Clare, albeit a weak and Clare side, but still, Kilkenny seemed to have hit the ground running in the first round of the league against ourselves, and I expected them to take Galway, but obviously not. It seems to me that Meall has got the most out of a good few of the newer members in the panel, and they performed admirably. And I suppose it's giving him food for thought for Saturday evening.
Yeah, just on that, Nicky, like particularly Go haven't beaten Kilkenny in a while. It was a result that we were probably all crying out for over the last years, but couldn't get over Kilkenny. But down in Nolan Park too, it's big for Go, isn't it?
Well, I think what makes the win all the better is that when Owen Cody goaled and put Kilkenny went a point up at that stage of the game. It seemed like a little bit of deja vu from a Galway point of view, but they showed great character coming back, attacked the goal. Kilkenny gave away a couple of needless frees, which Jason Flynn pointed, and then obviously Conor Whelan came with his only score of the game. So I think that will have given my Hall Donohoe better than anything. But I would say this though, in fairness, that I think Kilkenny, having left Clare and won that game, I think maybe more of a sense of relief than anything. I mean, they deserved to win, I think, just about, but it was far from convincing against what Fergal said was a weakened Lair team, albeit I would say this, that when you're part of an All Ireland panel, as these lads are now, they were trying their damnedest to make sure they're setting themselves up for a game this year or for contention this year. So, but I'd say in the same way as Galway didn't play as bad against Tipperary as the game indicated, I think, and Michal Donoghue said as much to us after the match. So I think just I kind of caution on both results that it's going to mean an awful lot, except that obviously the fact that both teams now have Galway and Kilkenny have won one and lost one, so they still have work to do to make sure they're staying out at the bottom two.
Fergal, you've obviously worked with quite a number of these younger Galway players now coming through, and you would have worked with Brian Hanley and Keith Daniels with the minors and under 20s. In particular, a lot of the players you're starting to that you did work with, like they had really big performances there on Sunday.
Yeah, it was great to see Tiernan get, I suppose, a lot more game time with Galway, particularly in National League games. And over the course of the last 2 years, Paul, I suppose he's been getting 40, 50 minutes, the odd hour. And, it just goes to show that Hall is looking to the youth now, and he's trying to push these guys on and give them the full hour and blood them for as long as they possibly can. And it was good to see him play well. Like he had a great campaign with Loughrea, obviously, and John Cooney. From what I've heard, he's been played really well with GMIT. And obviously we know the setup of the goal for Decky. And like Decky himself, Decky's a guy, I suppose, who has sprung from, I suppose, not really, I wouldn't say from nowhere, it'd be a cruel thing to say, but he was always a really skillful hurler, but it lacked a little bit of size. But I suppose Henry gave him a great chance over the course of the last 2 years, and he really has stepped up and is one of the real marksmen for Galway. And then you look on to other guys like Shane Morgan there, who's been brought in a cornerback, really, really good, strong player, had a great campaign with Loughrea and potentially could be a six for Galway if he's persisted with. It could be an issue for Galway maybe down the line. I know they've tried Shane, they're looking at Finton maybe there, Dahi Bork, but it's a position that probably they need to work on and to fill and look at something long term, and Morgie might be the man to do that.
Just on that, because the man who did play six, Gavin Lee, it was a big surprise for all of us to see him there
Yeah.
because we just know him as a wing forward, and that's where he's got his breakthrough. But it was an exceptional performance he gave at centre half back on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Look at he is an exceptional player. He's a bit of an enigma, to be honest. A guy I suppose we'll have to put in that he's Clare blood in him too. So he look. We always have I suppose Martin down as maybe to maybe put him in a half back line role. I'm sure we know the most modern halfbacks now they're really attacking in terms of especially in your five and your seven, not so much as your six since they sit a little bit more. But like he had a serious game at the weekend. Do I see him playing at six in the long term? Probably not. He's a guy that could offer an awful lot more further up the field. And you know he's a real eye catcher for Galway, and you'll be hoping that he'll be there for a good few years to come.
Yeah, Nicky, like one of the big takeaways from the weekend was that Galway half-back line, even Porrick Mannion in beside Gavin Lee, like they really did dominate that area.
Well, there's no question about it. I mean, in the first half, Pádraig Mannion had 2 points, Gavin Lee had 2 points, and Tom Onhan had 3 points. So in that time into the field in the first half, they got 7 points from play. Now that's a serious return. Now TJ Brennan was under big pressure from Marcy Keown on the other side, to be fair. But I think that Gavin Lee was, it was a new position for him. Obviously, something Mike Mihal wanted to try out in the league. But he did have the luxury of being given a lot of space there. Cian Kenny was picked as centre forward, but wouldn't by any manner of means be a centre forward, and there's no chance he'll be playing there in the league or in the championship. He's a midfielder or maybe a roving corner forward. He's played in both of those positions, but centre forward, not at all. I would like to have seen, if you had the likes of John Donnelly up against Gavin Lee, that might be a better test because Donnelly would be more a one-on-one player and would probably pose a lot more tests for him. But they simply had too much space, those three players in particular. And I mean, a 7 point return from that part of the field in that diamond. Now, Tiernan Killeen had a good second half as well. David Blanchfield probably stood off him a little bit. But having said that, look, we all wanted to try new things out with his team. Clearly, after the last day, as you said afterwards too, some of the changes were enforced because of injuries and all that sort of thing. And she look at Declan McLaughlin was a late call up at the end of the day for another half hour. I think Oisin Lohan, I think it was, and he'll be delighted to have got someone of them. And those sort of games and those performances give those players a fair bit of confidence. So whether they'll carry on, like that during the course of the league and whatever, I just don't know. But it worked out well for them last Sunday, and leaving Nolan Park with a brace of points was a good confidence builder.
Yeah, because Nicky, even after the Tipperary game was interesting, a lot of people might have been down about the result, but Mihal talked about giving exposure to these players because simply some of these players haven't probably been given exposure and competitive game time for Galway.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I mean, he talked to us about having a panel of 57, which obviously in my view, causes its own challenges because it can be tougher on selectors to make up their minds who's going to make the 32 or 3 or 4, whatever they're all turned up for the championship. But I mean, he knows he has to try out new players. A number of lads have either gone from the scene voluntary or maybe got the curly finger to say time was up and whatever. So, and that's understandable. He has to make changes to the Galway setup, but he also has to make sure that he has strong physical players there to handle the battle that's going to emerge. I mean, if you contrast the Kilkenny Galway game, which was competitive, but it wasn't as competitive, say, as the Cork Limerick game, which took place on Saturday evening, which had a real edge to it. Now that maybe a bit of history in there as well, but I mean, both Kilkenny and Limerick, or Kelly and Galway, will have to be capable of stepping up to that, and they will because both of them have to play Cork and Limerick, and that'll be a better test for them in the next few weeks.
With that, Fergal, like you talked there about some of the players who got game time that you would have previously worked with, and there can sometimes be this lazy narrative here that maybe the young hurlers aren't here, but like even going by the weekend and going by Fitzgibbon performances early in the year, like the young hurlers are definitely there. Like even Oisin Lohan from the first day, like your heart nearly went out to him because he played so well in the first game and then picks up an injury now, which sees him out for a few weeks.
Yeah, look at it. I suppose looking back in the last 3 4 years, even since Shane O'Neill and Fergal Healy and David Ford were involved, there has been a rebuild happening, and it has been simmering in the background with the under 20s and with the minors, trying to develop a player that is physically strong enough and possesses the key skills to be able to match with, I suppose, the players that have exited stage. And I think the work has been done, and it has been done really well by the coaches and the managers in previous years. Um, Mihal is a guy, I suppose, that has, I suppose he's coming with a lot of feathers in his cap in terms of his management abilities and in his role as a successful manager previously. But like it is something and a real balancing act, as Nickey said. You do need to have those, I suppose, more experienced physical players around that will help, I suppose, to develop the likes of your Oisin Lawns, your Decky McLaughlins, your Shane Morgans, even your Liam Collins is there. And I suppose the huge positive for Galway is how they reacted after being beaten by Tipperary in Pearse Stadium to go down to Nolan Park, which is not an easy place to go to. And like, let's face it, Kilkenny had a number of players, a number of potential starters in Championship, and Galway had a bit of an experimental side. So I suppose Miall has to be happy with that, and he has to be happy with, I suppose, the way that these players have developed and how they're, I suppose, what the prospect will be like for them in the future is definitely heartening for, I suppose, the Galway supporters.
It really will come to Fergal. You feel like getting a consistency with the team between this youth and experience. Like that's what it's going to come, and it's probably something Mihal wants to find before the end of this league, a settled Galway team.
Yeah, well, that's what the league will be for I suppose, for Mihal. I mean, for him to get anywhere near the knockout stages and that with an experimental side or with guys that have that little lacking experience and giving them as much game time as they possibly can. I suppose this is not an immediate goal for Mihal to get success. Would be great for it to happen for Galway, but I suppose he's looking down the line here of maybe this is a 2 3 year project out where we can get these players up to such a high standard that they can be competitive enough to win in All Ireland. And certainly that can be done. These guys, the majority of these guys that lined out last weekend against Kilkenny have, I suppose, competed in, I suppose, All Ireland series in both minor and under 20, and have been very very competitive. So I wouldn't really worry too much in that respect that the experience of playing in the big stage isn't there. But I suppose it's just getting the game time in, and as we say here in Clare, get the mileage in the legs, get the mileage in games. And if he can do that with these players and still, I suppose, be successful in some of those league games, then it's a huge advantage to him.
Nickey, on Sunday we were 215 to 13 points up, and like similar, you never give in. You just came right back at us again to get the doubts going again.
Well, that's what I think Mihal and when they're in training there now this week, that's the thing that will he'll be putting home to them, that they showed resilience at the end. Yes, when Owen Cody did get the goal to put Kilkenny ahead. I mean, Kilkenny were not deserve. Were Galway were deservingly ahead of Kilkenny at that stage, but Kilkenny hit a good patch then. Cody's goal put them ahead, and as has happened in the past, Kilkenny sometimes just push on in that. But no, Galway didn't on this occasion. Now look, it's a league game and it's in the month of February. Everything needs to be put in context here. This is about maybe just mentally getting the players right and getting to believe that what is possible there. None of those players have a decent enough track record over Kilkenny at minor and under 20 grade, to be honest about it. Okay, some of them have missed out. Rather ironically, two of the guys who played really well that day missed out when Kilkenny, the year they won the under 20s a couple of years ago. Kilkenny played Galway up in Tullamore, and two players that were not eligible to play in those games were actually Gavin Lee and Tiernan Killeen. They were missing that night. That game went to extra time, which Kilkenny won, and Kilkenny went on to subsequently win the All Ireland.
And
And there was
Galway
other
missed two
players.
penalties, Nicky.
That's it. I was coming to that as well. And there was no. That's no. I have no doubt that if Gavin Lee and Tiernan Killeen were there that night, and I mean, I spoke to Brian Hanley after. Now I didn't, and I spoke to him, but I didn't in the interview. I didn't kind of bring it up, but I privately, when I finished the thing, I commiserated with him, and he didn't have Gavin Lee, and I wouldn't mind only both of them were used. I think in a league match against Westmeath by Henry, which was meaningless sort of a game. So it was at that time where you played 20. If you played National League, you couldn't go back to 20s.
Yeah.
I thought it was a terrible waste, and it probably cost Galway. And I know Brian Hanley wasn't one bit happy after that, but he's being the gentleman he is. He didn't want to say too much about it. But those lads have now come through, and I think they're a good addition. I think I will say this about Micheál Donoghue. I think he does realise that in going back to Galway, he has a year or two maybe to just to put a strong team together. It will take time, and there will be some pain along the way. And it's probably All Irelands are maybe a little bit down the road for him at this stage. But at the same time, he just wants to get players that he can really work with and develop a panel of 33, 4, 5 players that he can really make a competitive Galway team. That's what his target is at the moment. And winning games like last Sunday helps to develop the character of the players going forward.
Particularly to Nickey, when you mentioned that, it was nearly like Galway had to win the game twice.
Oh yeah, good point. Because I mean, in the past, Kilkenny would have gone ahead of Galway when they got that goal, as happens a few times. No, that's not all the time. In fact, over in Henry's first match in Ballinasloe, Kilkenny levelled the game and they got back and got the point as well, which okay, controversial for you might say. So look, Galway will get belief from that, and I mean Kilkenny's track record in Leinster, they've gone 5 in a row. Galway have possibly in Henry's time he deserved at least one Leinster, to be fair to the guy. I think he just the bounce of the ball caught him on a few occasions. I have to say that. And he knows that himself from little chats I've had with him and that. But look, Mihal comes in successful at club, already successful at intercounty level. He comes with a strong pedigree. So when he's talking to players in the dressing room, the players know they're talking to a guy that has already achieved success with the county. And that's going to be strong in the dressing room. They'll be taking listen to his words very carefully because they know he's a winner.
On that too, Fergal, just towards the end of the game, like the two plays Darren Morrissey gave, it was exceptional bit of play, and he's went through his fair share of injuries, but to win those frees like they were hard earned.
Very hard earned, especially in conditions I don't think people realize what it takes for players to have themselves right so early in the year. I mean, the intercounty teams, they weren't allowed to go back until early December to go training. They're getting their own fitness in, their own gym work in, their own skill work in prior to all that. And like, there's only so much you can do in Loch George or in Athenry on a Saturday or a Thursday night under lights. So these guys, the amount of extra work that they do to get themselves in shape, and him especially, like he's an admirable player in terms of he's been put through so much and put through the ringer in injury, and he comes back again and again and again. And I suppose to be fair to say that he never really lets go all the way down. He performs very, very well for them, a typical type of a Sarsfield's way. He's never beaten as well. So, I mean, these guys, him and amongst others, the amount of work that they put in to get to this level in such an early time of the year. Now, I know Nickey alluded to there that we're still only in early February, but we're looking at it here and there. We could only be 12 weeks away from the first round of the Munster Championship, which isn't that far away if you give those couple of league games and until the clocks change maybe in six weeks' time. So, I mean, time is limited for Mihal and the other managers, and it's a really difficult thing for them to do is to manage that time and to ensure the players are coming at the right time and peaking at the right time.
Just when you mentioned that, and you mentioned Lee being so close to championship, and do you feel with the way even the 7 up, the 2 up, 2 down, that you nearly have to be honest? I'm not saying for all of the league, but like if you're already looking at this weekend, you have Wexford coming up against Kilkenny. Wexford's record against Kilkenny hasn't been too bad in previous years, so they'll fancy having a right crack out of it. And then the other teams to go down. If teams start beating each other, this could get very tight. And let's put it this way: like no one in this division really wants to be in 1B next year.
No, definitely not. No, no. You always want to be playing at the highest level to have yourself prepared for the highest level. I mean, ourselves coming to Pearse Stadium on Saturday night, it's a squeaky bum time for us too. We need to get points on the board. We've played two, or we played one. We haven't won anything yet. Other teams have all clocked in, bar Wexford. So I suppose we're looking to get scores and get points on the board here on Saturday. No more so than Galway are going to try and kick on. So I mean, each game, I suppose, is important in its own right. That it does push you forward to either make it comfortable or to get to a qualifier in it or the closing stage of it, or else that you're hitting the bottom area and you still have to be on. And you need to perform well at the end of the league to try and lead yourself into championship. Because if you don't have that, it brings morale low. It's hard for players to train, and the guys need to be happy to train. And you're happy when you win, obviously.
Just before we move on to the Clare game, Nickey with Galway this weekend. On an overall context, where do you feel Kilkenny are at the minute?
Well, I suppose before the game started last Sunday in Nolan Park, Adrian Mullen was in before Andy the crowd came in. He was doing a fair bit up on the sideline. He got injured in the two challenge matches between Kilkenny and Offaly and Kilkenny and Waterford. He got injured early enough in both of those games, but he was doing a heavy session, so he was not available this weekend. When the match was over, when it was going back up to the press area, um, John Donnelly, who had quick work, just said hello to him there. Tom Phelan, TJ Reid, Tommy Walsh. They were all. Didn't see Richie Reid there, no, but he may have been there. They were all out on the field doing a heavy session with the physical trainer John Murphy. So none of those players will be available to Kenny this weekend, according to Derek Ling. But he'd be hoping to get them back in soon because, as Fergal said there, I mean, things are pushing on a bit, right? There'll be a break of a week now, but the things are pushing on fairly quickly into the championship. And once you get into the championship, I mean, there's no time for error. And there is now maybe Offaly will be in the Leinster Championship this year, but certainly Galway, Dublin, and Kilkenny and Wexford will be fairly more than competitive. So you have to. There's only three of those coming out of it. So Kilkenny realises and Derek King realises that he has to get his panel he has to get a stronger panel. He has maybe we kind of would nearly guess the 15, 16, 17 players for the championship starters, if assuming no injuries. But I mean, he needs another 7 or 8 lads who really champion at the bit to take on those. So the next couple of weeks are very important for him now because the Kilkenny supporters would feel that they were in a good chance of getting 2 points last Saturday night. That put them on 4, take pressure off from point of relegation. That didn't happen. Going down to Wexford now, where they have an awful record in recent times. So the pressure is really on because the other big guns, Limerick, Cork, and Tip, are all coming up after that. So no points will be easily gained in all of that. So Kilkenny probably at this stage are under a certain amount of pressure. But look, it is the league, and we have to kind of cut managers a bit of slack because they have to try players out in the league because the intensity of the provincial campaign is it's where it's all at.
Would you still see Kilkenny as favourites for the Leinster Championship?
Well, they've won the last 5, so to be fair, it would be it'd be silly of me not to say that. Yeah, that they probably would be favourites at this stage, but I mean that's in the month of February. That's on the 5th of February, I would say that. But maybe when the league is over and we see how teams are performing and we know how teams are going, maybe you might turn around and say, well, look, Kilkenny might still be favourites, but they have a fair bit of work to do. But as of now, yeah, of course, they're favourites based on what they've done for the last couple of years. But there's work to be done, and there's all those players I mentioned who were training before or after the match. They need to be gotten back, and but unless Derek has real options on the bench that can bring on lads for because it's a 2021 man game now. That's the way it's gone at this stage. Such is the intensity of Championship hurling. But he wants really 5 or 6 players. Sorry, he needs more. He needs 10 players in the subs that he can feel very comfortable bringing in any of them to take on any position, and that's something that Kilkenny are still working on at the moment during this league.
Fergal on, the All-Ireland champions Clare coming to Pearse Stadium this weekend. In that Kilkenny game, only finished, I think, with 2 starters from the All-Ireland final winning team in David Reedy and Cathal Malone. Dave McInerney obviously picks up an injury since then, and Conor Cleary, Peter Duggan are some of the players still sidelined through injury. Tony Kelly hasn't come back yet, Shane O'Donnell. What kind of team are you expecting Clare to bring up to Galway this weekend?
I'd say Brian will still be looking at a bit of an experimental side. A few guys heard reasonably well against Kilkenny that he'd be looking at to maybe give a game again. And David Conroy, he had an excellent game. Shane Meehan played reasonably well as well. So I would say he's going to come with those guys again, give him another go, another shot to prove themselves. But I would also say that he might start to leak back in a couple of more of the stronger players and give them game time because he does see that this maybe is a game that we need to win to get ourselves off the bottom of the table. And I'd say you could end up seeing a couple of the regular starters coming back into it. Now Fitzgibbon Cup may play a little bit of a kibosh in him on that. But I suppose Brian will be looking after his own corner, and I suppose that he may not really be looking at the ULs and the LITs and these guys that are involved with Mary I and stuff. That he's just going to carry on without them or with them. Sorry.
There is that difficulty too, because Adam Hogan and Jay Meehan are kind of struggled with injuries for Mary I throughout the Fitzgibbon Cup, and obviously players that he probably wants to get back into to the team.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, Adam being Adam, the leader that he is, I suppose it would be great for Brian to have him back. Um, Conor Lean obviously picked up an injury against
Mm.
Kilkenny, and you know, albeit he has a year down with Clare, but has huge experience in defending. And David McInerney as well. So I mean, you're taking three key quality defenders out of your defence there. John has very little done in terms of. I suppose match play with Clare has a fair bit of training done, John Conlon, but I wouldn't foresee him playing any part. And probably this weekend I'd be surprised to see that Ryan Taylor, a regular, probably that came back from cruciate ligament injury last year. You'll be hoping that he'll get time again. Didn't have a great day against Kilkenny. I suppose conditions doesn't suit him. He needs top of ground, quite strong or quite hard for him to get around. And moving forward then for our forwards, Reedy is really going very, very well. A real tenacious attacker. You'll be hoping that Ian Galvin will get some game time. David Fitzgerald is back training. So I would foresee that Brian would probably be filtering in a couple of these older players to try and get this win on Saturday. I do think that Clare will be going for it. And I am really looking forward to the challenge because Galway are coming off the back of a really good victory as well. So it's going to be an interesting evening.
When Fergal's mentioned some of the absentees there for Clare this weekend, potentially, Nickey, is this one that goal should be targeted?
Oh, I think this is a very open game. I don't. I think Galway will have to put the Kilkenny result to bed. I think yes, we'll give them some confidence, but I think Clare will be fired up having lost to Kilkenny, albeit very narrowly. And that game, quite frankly, could have gone anyway. Um, but I think it's a very open game. I think Clare will. I think Clare could very well win that match myself. I think. The pitch in Galway is not looking great at the moment, and that could be a factor, to be honest about it. But I do think Clare will win that game because I think they'll be fared up a little bit for it. Just one factor I noticed that both yourself and Fergal were talking about the whole issue of the Fitzgibbon Cup. Now, rather ironically, Kilkenny at this stage in the Kilkenny panel, there's no player involved in the Fitzgibbon Cup at all. Now, that in a way that's a bit of a concern because during the Brian Cody era, many of the players were very regularly involved with the Fitzgibbon Cup, and Cody always saw it as an important competition. Now, so does Derek Ling, by the way, but right now he doesn't have any of his panelists are involved in the Fitzgibbon Cup in any of the main colleges. One of the Canellans was involved a bit with UCD, all right, but not in the same way as we were involved in the past. So Kilkenny players are not figuring as prominently in the Fitzgibbon Cup in recent years than they would have in the past. So I think it's also a challenge for Kilkenny when you're not in that environment because the Fitzgibbon Cup is a great introduction really to the intercounty scene because it's the Fitzgibbon Cup is nearly on a par with the intercounty scene, and I know managers look to it as an important area. So I think that's just a small by the way. But I think Clare will go to Galway on Saturday night. I think they just might win it. I think I saw enough in Clare, and I think probably you'll see Brian bringing back one or two more, edging them back in, and just giving them a little bit of game time because he'll need to do that as well. Because as Fergal just said there earlier, the Munster Championship doesn't be too far gone around, and you want people really in top class shape by the end of the league to make sure that because the championship starts a couple of weeks later, and a false start in the Munster Championship, and you could be in a bit of bother.
Yeah, even just when you mentioned there, if it's Gibbon Cup, we are recording this on Wednesday night, but there is some Galway involvement tonight for Area I. Owen Lawless at fullback, Declan McLaughlin at corner forward there, Phil McDonough too from Mike Cullen and Dara Whelan, and then for UL who are into the semi-final next week, you have Derek Fahey in goals, and Sean O'Hanlon and Jeremy Hanafy played very well last week against Mary I in that round three game too. So there is some Galway involvement left, even though both colleges in ATU Galway and the University of Galway are out of the competition. So in the total there, you have about 7 players left in that Fitzgibbon Cup. Fergal, on this, like it's a great result for Galway, but even with the supporters, when they see getting a result down now in Nolan Park, there nearly is around supporters a bit of expectation that it's important for this Galway team to back up a result like that.
Yeah, I suppose the expectation will be high too. the Galway supporters will be looking upon it like, okay, we got a great victory against Kilkenny away. We are now at home in our own area, our own turf. It's another target for us to get over a win over, I suppose, the All Ireland champions, and it would be a huge achievement for Galway to do, and it would be something, I suppose, that they would see as something they could build on going forward and for the rest of the league and maybe going into the championship. I do think maybe it might be a bridge too far on Saturday night, as Nickey alluded to there. I think Clare will be quite fired up for this. I think they will look at it as an opportunity to get themselves on track, and I'd be hoping so, because I suppose from a Clare point of view, it could put us in a position where we're playing Wexford and Limerick in the coming next league games, and um if Wexford don't get the result the way they want to get against Kilkenny, then they will be hugely hungry to come to Clare, and as well as us playing Limerick. So, but I suppose going back to the Galway supporters and the expectation, yes, it will be there. However, I do think that Clare will probably come out on top at the weekend. You'd be hoping so anyway.
Because there is this thing too, Nicky, where Galway are one of the only few counties that have two home games this year in Division 1A of the National Hurling League. So this is the last home game before the Leinster Championship comes around. And what happened against Tipperary, there is going to be an element here of, I suppose, finishing the home campaign in the league on a victory.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and the supporters will be coming to Pierce Stadium in good mood on Saturday evening, because they'll realise, Clare, that Galway did recover big time after what happened against Tipperary, and there'll be credit given to the team and the players for that. So I think there'll be a decent crowd there, and obviously it's only up the road from the Clare point of view. So I think you'll see a big crowd and a good competitive day. I hope the evening is good, because you obviously this time of the year you're at the mercy of whatever the elements throw at you. So I hope it's a good evening from that point of view, and we'll hopefully get to see the game, because the Kilkenny Wexford game is on at 5:30. So I think the Galway Clare game is probably a bit later, I'd imagine.
Half
So
seven, yeah.
7:30, yeah. So we might try and get to see that one as well. So look, and I think it'll be a competitive game. I do, as I said, agree with Fergal. Give the nod to Clare. I think they just might have they have a bit to play for, having lost their first match, and but Galway now know they have they've got their first 2 points, so they'll be fired up a little bit in that. And teams will still be experimenting a bit. They'll want to give a few players an opportunity. And as I said, Fitzgibbon Cup might very well dictate the availability of some players or other, depending the way the games go this evening.
On that, Nicky, from what you've seen with the goal 15 that started, like it was quite drastic. I know some were injury enforced, but there were some changes then that Micheál Donoghue made. Um, but on this, would you expect Micheál Donoghue to stick similar to the 15 that started against Kilkenny?
Well, I think given the result that he got against Kilkenny, I think he'll probably at least give most of the players who played that game a fair chance. Now, unless there was any injuries there, he made a couple of switches during the course of the game. But I think broadly he'll go with that team to start with, and try and see how they go. Now that he'll still have obviously plenty of subs to draw on if necessary. And as I said, it's a big squad now. It's 2021 players are going to be needed to win these games now. So I think he'll probably go very much with what he had, keep the same kind of main players in the main positions, and at least they deserve another chance. Having claimed Kilkenny's scalp, I think they will deserve that. And I think, well, as far as Clare is concerned, I think Brian will be keen to just get in a few players. David McInerney obviously is going to be out. He's one player I know is out, and so he'll probably be wanting to bring back in some of the more experienced players and get them back into the team, and just get them hurling again, because the weeks don't be long going by, to be honest about it. And you're still at the stage where it's not that easy to get an awful lot of hurling in during the week now. Okay, teams now have access to a floodlighting and all of that, but you can't overdo it, I suppose, this time of the year as well. A lot of the emphasis at this time of the year is probably on gym work still.
Would you expect Iberg to come back in this weekend, Fergal?
Yeah, you'd like to see him get in and get game time with Galway. Where will he slot in, Paul? That's the question. The six backs have hurled reasonably well, but I suppose Bar TJ hadn't really a great day the last day. Although I do think TJ is probably better off in the full back line. So yeah, you'd expect to see him get some game time against Clare. Like conditions, Paul, on Saturday. I've played in Pearse Stadium, we've managed teams in Pearse Stadium.
You
It's
love
a
it like everyone else.
very, very tricky place to play, a very tricky place to manage, even because I mean, on a really good day, and as Nicky would tell you, there's wind there. And on Saturday night, if there's wind and rain, and the surface conditions haven't been great there, let's be honest. So Dahi Burke being the kind of a dog-like attitude that he has when he's hurling real physical, aggressive style of a player, it's something that Mihal may look to try and bring in against Clare, especially against Clare are quite a physical team as well. And I suppose they like to put themselves about, and they like to run the ball too. So, I mean, that type of style would suit Dahi in terms of backing it up physically, but also his football know-how and his hurling know-how will be able to, I suppose, counter our running game.
It already does feel like when we're talking about this, Nicky, that it is sort of going to lead to a physical, scrappy game on Saturday night, just with the way conditions have been. Even we've seen it in the football in Pearse Stadium with that goal in our Armagh game. It just with the way it is at the minute, and I suppose the time of year we're in, it's not really going to lend itself to an open, free flowing game of hurling.
Well, yeah, on the face of it, I think that I don't know what the weather conditions are going to be like, and I smiled there when I heard Fergal talking about the conditions there. I'm a lot older than either of you two guys, and I have my own experience of playing national leagues there against Clare or against Galway, sorry, in Pearse Stadium, and the howls coming in from the Atlantic, and I can tell you playing against the breeze in those days was not good. I mean, Noel Skane was in the goal, and if he got the ball out 20, 25 yards, about as far as it would go. So, yeah,
You
I,
were
I
playing
know
the
what.
ball short that time, so Nicky, were you?
No, there was a lot of different type of hurling then. There was no such thing as there was no such thing as wing backs going out one side to get a quick puck out. It was the game. The game is unrecognizable now today from what it was back in those days. I can tell you this much. But look, it didn't mean it was any less exciting or any less physical and all that sort of stuff. But look, the evening can have a bearing on it, of course, and the conditions are that way. But we've got to bear in mind that the hurlers on both Clare and Galway, they're very, very good stickmen. Their hurling is crisp. They're able to control the ball in a flash. If the ball is hit at them, they're able to control it on their hurley. They don't necessarily have to get it into their hand. So they're not as dependent on getting the ball off the ground, perhaps as they were in the past, such as the quality of their wristy hurlers and all of that. So that's a factor. But nevertheless, yes, of course, the weather and the way it goes can dictate the game and the quality of the game. But nevertheless, I do think you'll get look the games are physical now and they're probably gone generally more physical. We saw it on Cork and Limerick, and I think Clare and Galway will be something. Well, there'll be plenty of physicality in the game, and it often can come down to a lucky break here or there can be the difference between the teams as well. And of course, the quality of the free taking can be important as well. And both teams have good free takers in that regard.
Just on it, from what you've seen from the players that came in, would you see any changes there? Would you see it more or less going with the same?
Well, I think probably Conor Cooney didn't last the full game. I suppose he's been
Yeah.
around. Probably he's one of the elder statesmen. If Conor wouldn't mind me saying that on the team, he still brings a lot to the team. But I some of those players I wouldn't be as familiar with. John Cooney, obviously, I'm aware of. I've seen him before, but it's relatively new to the scene as well. Probably be expecting maybe more from Conor Whelan. All right, he was probably quite by his own standards and things like that. But the rest of the forwards were generally moving well. Jason Flynn came on, and while he's probably going to be an impact sub more than a regular starter, at least when he came on, he was able to pop over the points after Conor Cooney had gone off, and he finished them and put them over the bar. That's good for the management to see that they bring on a player. He's confident enough to take those frees at a time of the game when the game was possibly slipping from Galway. Declan McLaughlin obviously made a very big impression when he came on, and he's probably has his name down for a starting slot. And as Fergal said earlier, I mean, Henry Shefflin obviously thought a fair bit about him. He brought him onto the panel, and he's not a player I would have probably known an awful lot from the underage days, but he's made a good impression there now. And I like the way he put away the two goals. Possibly Ed and Tallis might have stopped the first one, but he had no chance with the second one. But it was the fact that he was so alert for the second goal after Tallis had saved the hard shot from John Coney. I mean, it broke out to McLaughlin. He just picked it up. He didn't even catch it in his hand. He just doubled back on it first time into the net. That's a good sign of a forward that has a sharp eye for goal and didn't want to overplay the ball, and because he realised he only had a moment to strike it.
Just on Declan McLaughlin, Fergal, because you did mention him there at the outset, and even from being at the Mary UL game, he is this player that just once he gets ball in hand, he doesn't care who you are, and he's just willing to take you on. And I think his speed is nearly underestimated too when you see him in action.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose 3 years ago when I was involved in coaching with the Galway 20s, we we were I suppose we were working on a system or a style of play to get our half forwards going back to field. And you mentioned Dermot Hennessy there, who's hurling with Mary I as well. He hadn't hurled at all, never hurled underage with Galway. And both of those started wing forward that day that Nickey was talking about that went extra time with Kilkenny when Liam Collins missed two penalties. Both of those that I started, I think Dermot got 3 points and I think Decky got four. Decky was more of a sub coming on in minor. I suppose when we played Galway in minor with Clare in 2019, and he's a guy I suppose who's developed a late developer, but he's a really sharp forward, and he's a guy I suppose that he doesn't lack in confidence in terms of his own ability, but he works quite hard at it. I said there earlier that he's not the biggest guy on the field, but he's quite good in the air. He's good when the ball hits the ground, but he's a really sharp forward. He knows where the posts are, and he is something I suppose that Mihal, if he keeps working on with him, he's a guy that could be a real ace for Galway. And if he continues the form that he's in, there's no reason why he could be a main starter with them for the year ahead.
Can you see him being a starter this year?
Definitely, yeah, I can. In the half forward line, maybe not. I think he's more of an inside guy. In lately, I can see that he's more of an inside guy. He's a bit of a poacher in terms of he's a great eye for goal. And I think physically, I think that if Galway need to go forward further, they need to start looking at, I suppose, stronger physical guys on our half forward line, on their half forward line. I'd see he'd been looking at Oisin Loan. Unfortunately, Oisin is after picking up an injury. That type of an athlete, that guy that's able to get back to field, and physically strong in terms of breaking the tackle and going forward as well. And you can see the style of play that Mihal plays. We saw it with Dublin last year when they came and beat Galway in Pearse Stadium. All of those Dublin guys, huge men, and able to get themselves around the field. And that's something that Mihal will look to. And if Decky is to play, which I hope he does, I could see him playing the inside line.
Yeah, Kevin Cooney's obviously one too that we could see. Just probably a hard time with injury over the last 12 months, but I think as the league and championship goes on, we'll see him get more and more minutes as it goes on. Just finally on this Clare game, Nicky, like we mentioned that it's gonna be a dogfight, but a real physical battle, and it's nothing less you'd expect. There's never really been too much between these two sides when they meet.
No, exactly. And I think both managers at this stage now, they've had their players for a number of weeks now, maybe not as long as some of the other counties have been at it for a long time before that. They might have been only supposed to start in early December, but and take it from me, there was counties hard at it since last September. But that's
Who are
another
they,
for another.
Nicky?
That's another day's work. Don't make me to make statements like that. You know it as well as I do, Fergal, that was going on. But anyway, I think the players have done a fair bit of physical work now since, and they know at this stage, and the managers know that things have to start taking a bit of shape. Players are getting their opportunities now, and if you're coming onto a panel and you haven't been an established player, you're getting your opportunity during the league. We've mentioned a number of players during our chat here this evening from across Kilkenny, Clare, Galway, who have had some opportunity. Some are grasping them and some are struggling to grasp them. And that'll define their years. They could either be part of the main panel, or they could be some of the fringe players who will struggle to make an impact. And that's what these league games are about. I mean, whether it's a bad night or a good night, weather-wise, it doesn't matter. You have to take these opportunities. Otherwise, managers will inevitably revert back to the players they know the best, who have maybe been in the championship before, have generally still have faith in them, and that's where emerging players now have opportunities. And there's plenty of emerging players on all of the three teams we have discussed tonight, and they need to now get an opportunity. They now need to take this opportunity and start putting real pressure on what might be some of the established players. We have the All Ireland champions Clare, who are perhaps more settled, subject to players not being injured. So that team is, that's not going to change an awful lot. Galway are going to be trying quite a number of new players. And during the course of this league, as Mihal is going to take a little bit of time to bed in a team that's capable of winning on All Ireland. I think he's admitted that himself. And from a Kilkenny point of view, Derek King knows that he has to unearth a number 4 or 5 more players that are going to put serious pressure. He's lost Conor Forty, Killian Buckley and Walter Walsh, and while their time has come, there's a huge amount of experience gone with those three players. You could bring them in off the bench. You saw what Killian Buckley done in the Leinster final there not that long ago. He hasn't got the people to come in yet and take on those jerseys, and that's what he's hoping this league will emerge from this league. So there's plenty of hurling and to be watched over the next couple of weeks that will shape what's going to happen in the championship.
There's an interesting side plot here too, Fergal. Obviously, Brian Lohan's added a Galway man into his backroom team this year in Rory Gantley.
Yeah, look at I suppose Shane Hassett had a great number of years given to Clare coaching over I suppose the last 4 or 5 years, and I suppose he's gone on his merry way after winning an All Ireland to further fields. But I suppose Brian had to look to see who would be, I suppose, the best replacement that would fit well with his management team with Brendan Bugler and Tommy Corbin and Ken Ralph. And obviously, we all know Rory. Rory's winning. He was involved in Kilmallock when they won the county championship a number of years ago with Tony Constantine. He was obviously with Bata himself, and he was in with Tubber and Clare, who got to an intermediate final this year, and unfortunately missed out very, very narrowly to Wolf Tones in the final. So Rory's great experience in coaching, and he's a real kind of level-headed guy and a very sociable guy, a guy that gets on very, very well with players. He knows the game. He knows the players. I mean, some of the Beha boys used to play with Tubber in years gone by, and some of the Tubber boys used to play in Beha. So with Beha, so I suppose if you could say that part of him would be a Clare man too if he's down that side. So he knows the landscape really well, and I know Bugs really well, the coach, and I know that he did that they both get on really well, and watched a few sessions, and Clare seem to be moving reasonably well, albeit it's very, very early in the year. And the players look like that they're responding well to him.
Does a win for Galway or Clare, like whoever wins this Saturday night, Fergal, do you think either side has started to think about going after a league final?
It's still a little bit early. I suppose it's a bit early for ourselves because it's only our second game. I mean, as we said earlier, we take every step as they come. I suppose going from my own experience and being involved in coaching Clare and playing with Clare, that you take every league game as they come. You play the main focus for Clare this week. I know it has been on Pier Stadium on this Saturday, and the focus again the next week will be the game after that and the game after that. So, and I suppose it's about getting performances for Clare, and as Nickey said, to unearth a few players that will push on and maybe, I suppose, replace the guys that we feel in Clare that might not be eligible to perform to the ability as they can again in next year, and or probably replace a guy that maybe picks up that unfortunate injury. So we're trying to build, I suppose, the same in every team in every county. They're trying to build a panel of the 24, 5, the 22 players that they can say, right, we have 5, 6 here that will slot in, and it will not weaken our side, and it will keep the ship afloat no more so the way that Limerick play and the way that they go about their business, you know. So yeah, certainly it's going to be a game that both teams will want to win, but I suppose it's not something they'd look at and say, right, we could get to a National League final out of this win. It's just something that are saying, right, job done, let's move on next day.
Yeah, and obviously with that, there's probably bigger tests too, Nicky, for both of these sides to come down the line against Cork and Limerick.
Oh, no question about it. And from a Kilkenny point of view, throw in Tipperary as well, the noisy neighbour. So yeah, there's a lot of big stuff to come down the line. That's why if Kilkenny are not to get the 2 points in Wexford Park on this Saturday night, it could be very challenging for the league. And while it's never the end of the world, go down to 1B. I mean, again, going back into the years gone by, I mean, I was part of a Kilkenny team that won 1B and ended up actually winning the All Ireland final the same year. So it's always doable to some extent, but nevertheless, different eras. You can't really compare them anymore. But Kilkenny don't want to contemplate going down to a lower division, so they'll be very keen to win it. But look, it's early year. It's only we're talking about the 5th of February as we chat here tonight, and there's a lot of things can happen between now and the end of the league before we even talk about the two provincial championships.
Great stuff. Well, that's all we do have time for on this evening's show, but it is Galway and Clare, 7:30 this Saturday in Pearse Stadium, live on TG Car, and it'll be the Galway Hurlers' first Saturday night game under lights this year, and their last home game of the league as well this year, which is already hard to believe, but that's the way it's fallen for them this year. But thanks again to Nickey and Fergal for coming on.